Other selves, doppelgangers, doubles, and alternate identities have always been present in our artistic imaginations. They present a way for us to see characters in multiple, nuanced ways. They can be mirror opposites, yin and yang, light and dark, a representation of the Jungian shadow, or even clones and doppelgangers created by supernatural forces or science. So many doubles, doppelgangers, and other selves exist in Lynch's work. The examples I'll be talking about today are from Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and the 2017 reboot of Twin Peaks. In this video essay, I'll be discussing visuals and ambiguity, two factors that play into making Lynch's doubles work so well. To start, I'll talk a bit about Lynch's paintings. David Lynch's paintings are incredibly important to consider when analyzing his films. Lynch's paintings seem to exude these mirror images primarily through the heavy use of black and white and the palette he uses. Black paints are used to visualize chaos, disorder, and darkness in Lynch's paintings. On the other hand, the brighter coloring in canvas in his paintings can be seen as representations of normalcy, reality, and light. This is an artistic choice that Lynch carried over into his filmmaking. Lighting, coloring, and composition are all incredibly important when discussing Lynch's films. David Lynch is known in popular culture for his dreamy, interpretive, and complicated style.
Hello, I got you a present. It's a thumb. Don't look away. Let the fear wash over you.
I don't understand.
That's the whole point. Now, did you leave a plate of black coffee out for me?
No?
In the future, please leave a plate of black coffee out for me. Also in the past.
Lynch makes the viewer draw their own conclusions from his work, and this ambiguity is very important to Lynch's style. Lynch makes the viewer draw their own conclusions from his work, and this ambiguity is very important to Lynch's style.
But when things get abstract, it does me no good to say what it is, It's better, all viewers on the surface, we're all different. And we see something, and that's another place where intuition kicks in, and inner knowingness. And so you see a thing, you think about it, you feel it, and you go and you sort of know something inside, and you can rely on that.
Here, Lynch is talking about Eraserhead, but this idea applies to all his work. We see what he puts on the screen and we draw our own interpretations of it. Many things are left ambiguous on purpose for this reason. Just like his films, Lynch's paintings are also abstract and can be hard to extract direct meaning from. However, it very often conveys a certain feeling throughout its composition, and I believe that this is the intention of these works, to convey incredibly specific feelings when you view his works. To show how all of these contribute to our understanding of Lynch's art, I'll give an example. Here is a painting made by Lynch in 2004 titled, "This Man Was Shot 0.9502 Seconds Ago." Let's analyze this painting. The first thing we get from this piece is the shock, the immediate reaction to the man being shot less than a second ago. There are so many unknowns. Who shot the man? Why was this man shot? Who even was this man? The ambiguity is a big part of the piece. Next, let's look to the floor. Here, we see light and dark. The lighting, where the man is standing, is different than the lighting behind him. This seems to imply a heavenly light, possibly related to the spirit emerging from the man's chest. While the background contrasts with the light, the other source of darkness we see is on the ground, in the man's shadow. This gives us our double imagery. This shadow lacks both the spirit as well as the blood. Does this represent an alternate reality where the man wasn't shot? We don't know. The ambiguity is the point of this painting and serves the double imagery. While this might feel like overanalyzing, Doing close visual readings and analyzing ambiguity of Lynch's work is paramount to understanding what he's conveying, not just as a filmmaker, but also an artist, and using that to draw our own interpretations. Using these ideas, let's take a look at the visual language and ambiguity of Lynch's films in order to see how they convey the idea of the double. I'll start with Lost Highway, released in 1997. On page 56 of Making Sense of Lost Highway, Warren Buckland writes, "The narrative of Lost Highway is organized like a loop, or better, a Mobius strip, rather than linearly. Fred and Pete are two sides of the same coin, the opposite sides of a Mobius strip. While they are played by two different actors and have their own separate identities, they are functionally one character. They are never seen on screen together, and at certain points in the film, Fred turns into Pete, and vice versa." So how does Lynch visually convey this Mobius strip? First, we need to analyze the lighting. Lost Highway is an incredibly dark film. And at first, it wasn't completely on purpose. In a Zoom call with our class, Peter Deming, the cinematographer for Lost Highway, told us about how Lost Highway's dark lighting was partially an accident.
And there's a shot in Lost Highway where it's Bill Pullman in the house and it's just a shot and he sort of comes into view, sort of comes out of darkness and then keeps going and you realize you're over his shoulder into a mirror. And the original image of him is in a mirror. And that shot, when I saw it, was I had underexposed it and it was kind of murky and I wasn't really happy with it. And when we watched dailies, we were watching dailies, I said, "Oh, that's underexposed, David. We should redo that," which I should never have said because he said, "I love that. I want the whole movie to look like that."
Lost Highway uses light and darkness for much of its visual storytelling. Even the poster is a split between light and dark. Fred's journey throughout the first half of the film, metaphorically speaking, goes from light to dark. Again, in this shot, Fred looks up at a light above the bars. He's gone from light to dark, and is looking at the unobtainable light from the darkness of his cell. Then, finally, when he changes into Pete, a bright flash of light floods the frame. Fred is going from his guilty, murderous self to the innocent Pete. And Pete's journey is the complete opposite of Fred's. Pete escapes the darkness of Mr. Eddie and makes his way to the light, freedom with Alice. Pete's journey is bookended with light as well, this time in the headlight of the car he escaped town in. So when we look at this from our Mobius structure metaphor, Fred is the dark side of the strip and Pete is the light. Fred and Pete are linked together like a yin and yang. Lost Highway has another prominent double, but presented in a different way. Instead of two actors playing the same character, this time, with Patricia Arquette's Renee and Alice, we have one actress playing two characters. And this time, lighting isn't involved at all.
And then in terms of the two characters that Patricia played, again, there was no discussion of a visual shift on how to present those characters. It's totally organic, came out of hair, makeup, wardrobe, the worlds that they lived in, the sets that they lived in. There's no help.
Deming is saying that Patricia Arquette's two characters have no difference in the way they were shot. The way you can tell them apart is because of their costuming and makeup. Let's look at Renee and Alice side by side. There are several visual differences in the way they costume Patricia Arquette to be two distinct characters. Renee is a brunette who dresses in dark clothing and wears dark red lipstick. On the other hand, Alice is a blonde who mostly wears light clothing. These clothing choices tie into the characters of Fred and Pete as well. Fred is associated with darkness, In his part of the film, Arquette plays Renee. Pete is associated with light. In his part of the film, Arquette plays Alice. In Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, released in 1958, we see a similar trend with two characters played by one actor. The characters of Madeline Elster and Judy Barton are both played by Kim Novak, but they are costumed in very different ways. In the first half of Vertigo, Scotty Ferguson, played by James Stewart, falls in love with Madeline Elster, who is blonde. At this point in the story, Scotty is moving towards light. However, in the second half of Vertigo, after Scotty believes Madeline to be dead, Novak's character, Judy, is brunette. That is, until Scotty makes her dye her hair blonde. At this point in the story, Scotty is moving towards darkness as he uncovers the truth. This visual motif with Kim Novak's character hairs in Vertigo is exactly like Patricia Arquette's character's hair in Lost Highway. Lost Highway is also a very speculative film. There are several questions across the film, but here are a few. In this scene, how is the mystery man in two places at once? In this scene, how is Fred talking to himself on the intercom? Where does Fred go when he swaps with Pete in the jail? While Fred and Pete are essentially the same character before the first swap, they both exist at the same time. Or do they? And how does the swap between Fred and Pete happen in the first place? It isn't just an imaginary swap, it happens for real. Pete is let out of prison because, well, he isn't Fred. This confusion isn't helped by the existence of an unreliable narrator.
I like to remember things my own way.
All of the questions we have about Lost Highway don't have a clear answer. We can draw conclusions, use evidence, and come up with theories, but the events of the film are ambiguous. These questions also all have to deal with doubles. The mystery man has to have a double to be in two places at once. Two Freds exist at once, as well as Pete, who is Fred's double. These ideas connect doubles with ambiguity in Lost Highway. In 2001, Lynch released Mulholland Drive, the tale of actress Betty Elms, played by Naomi Watts, who comes to Los Angeles and meets amnesiac Rita, played by Laura Herring. However, it's eventually revealed that Betty is not Betty, but a washed-up actress named Diane Selwyn, and Rita is a successful actress named Camilla Rhodes. Therefore, Diane is Betty's double, and Camilla is Rita's double. But how are these doubles visually presented? When analyzing this, I'll be focused on Naomi Watts' characters, Betty and Diane. These two characters exist in very different realities. Betty's bright, optimistic version of Los Angeles, where her and Rita fall in love, is the complete opposite of Diane's nightmare where she shoots herself. We can tell these two realities apart with a single frame, just by looking at the color. Betty's reality is bright, warm, and colorful. Diane's reality is the complete opposite, dark, dreary, and nightmarish. But how are Betty and Diane differentiated as characters? Just like in Lost Highway, none of this is due to the camera or lighting. While this unfortunately wasn't recorded, when Peter Deming came to visit our class, I asked him about this. Deming said that he shot Betty and Diane in the exact same way. The contrast between the two characters was all in the makeup and costuming. Let's look at Betty and Diane side by side. Betty's hair is well kept, her clothes are brightly colored, and she wears a lot of makeup. Diane's hair is messy and a more dirty blonde. She wears a robe, and she barely wears any makeup. Just like Arquette in Lost Highway, Watts' characters are differentiated visually by their costuming and physical appearance. In my interpretation of the film, Diane dreams Betty and Rita before her death, and they never existed in reality. Here is a scene that makes that theory ambiguous. Betty and Rita go into Diane's home and find what we later learn is Diane's corpse, positioned in the same way she lays after she shoots herself. So are Betty and Rita real? Well, they do talk to Diane's neighbor, who we know exists in Diane's reality. On page 30 of An Oniric Fugue, The Various Logics of Mulholland Drive, Andrews writes, just as the first section is viewed from the dreamer's perspective and is thus unreliable, the second section is viewed from the perspective of a paranoid woman on the verge of madness and suicide and is also unreliable. Just like in Lost Highway, we can again link ambiguity to doubles. The perspectives of both Betty and Diane are unreliable, and thus the events of the film are left up to the interpretation of the viewer. Mulholland Drive uses both visuals and ambiguity to portray its doubled characters.
Time to wake up.
Twin Peaks: The Return, also referred to as Twin Peaks: A Limited Event Series, or more simply as Twin Peaks Season 3, was David Lynch's final work in film. The series is set 25 years after the end of the original Twin Peaks, which concluded with a Bob-possessed Cooper on the loose, while the good Cooper was trapped in the Black Lodge. After the time skip, good Cooper is set free but is, well,
Coffee.
not the same. He still loves coffee, though. There are two parts of the return that I'll be analyzing here. The beginning of the series, where there are technically 3 Coopers, and the ending, where we learn a new identity for Kyle MacLachlan's character, Richard. First, let's look at how visual appearance contributes to the return's double imagery. Here, we have good old Dougie. His slick hair is a total contrast to his current mental state. His tie, a direct visual nod to his old Cooper self, is now striped instead of solid, telling us that he doesn't have the same authority that he used to. His bright green jacket is also a nod to Cooper's suit jacket, but this time in good guy green, because Dougie is the good twin. Let's take a brief look at original Dougie. He has no tie, a mustard-colored jacket, and medium-length hair. Unfortunately, he doesn't matter too much because he gets turned into a ball and never comes back. But he does represent a visual middle ground between good Cooper and evil Cooper. Evil Cooper, aka Mr. C, has long black hair that is very reminiscent of Frank Silva's Bob. He wears a black leather jacket, the bad boy version of Coop's suit jacket, and a snakeskin jacket underneath. The snakeskin jacket represents his individuality and belief in personal freedom. Just by visually analyzing the costume design for Dale Cooper's various identities and doppelgangers, we can understand how they double Cooper. On page 385 of It's a Strange World, Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock writes, the last 2 episodes of The Return possibly undermine the entire narrative of Cooper and his return. First, as the green-gloved superhero Freddy Sykes battles glowing orb Bob, Lynch superimposes Cooper's face over the action, giving us in essence 2 good Coopers, one present in body and one somehow observing unseen. Then the finale introduces the confusion related to Richard and Linda. Is Dale Cooper really someone named Richard who has dreamed the entire series? Are Good Coop, Mr. C, and Dougie Jones all parts or manifestations of this Richard? Or has Cooper somehow literally become someone else in the end? In typical Lynch fashion, there are many theories, but no answers to these questions. This quote once again links doubles and doppelgangers to visual design and ambiguity. In this video, I've outlined how Lynch uses visual design, such as costume design and makeup, and ambiguity in order to make his doubles so compelling.